Good afternoon. I hope everybody in the rear end of the hall is also hearing what we will be saying this afternoon. My name is Michiel de Rooij. I'm working for Film Museum in Amsterdam as a policy advisor, and I'm asked by the festival to moderate this session. I'm very glad that you are here with so many people. I think the topic, freedom versus restriction, is a very lively topic in the sector nowadays, and I would like to go back to yesterday evening when Monique van der Ven was telling an anecdote about the movie Turkish Delight, where she said, on the spot, we decided to shoot a scene with a handheld camera from the shoulder, and we were not having to account for to financiers, distributors, or whatsoever. We decided what we wanted to do, and I have the feeling, she said, that nowadays this freedom, what we had, is not existing in Dutch film sector anymore. Of course, freedom is not a recipe for success, she said. She said it is also a recipe for failure. But if you want to strive for success, freedom might be one of the criteria to obtain this success. First of all, I would like to introduce our panel members to you, or they will introduce themselves shortly, and then we will discuss a bit about how things are arranged in Denmark and how Tomas is working in Belgium with his production company as well. And we will ask Mieke to elaborate more about the film academy, and if the film academy is training students to work in a free environment, or they are already working within the system, they will explore later. So, Thomas, can I give you, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tomas Leyers. I have a small production company in Belgium called meest. We produce mainly feature films and documentaries, art house and author-driven, I might say. If you've been to the cinema last 10 years and you are interested in films, you might have seen films like Lost Persons Era, I'm the Same, I'm Another by Caroline Strube, the works by Gust van den Berge, Bluebird, Little Baby Jesus and Lucifer, and Bas de Vos Violet. These are all films that are festival selected, and I'll go into it later, how some of these films are created in complete freedom and others are made in complete restriction, and what it does to the productions and the creativity.
Thank you, Thomas. Mieke? Okay.
Mieke Bernink, I'm head of the master's program at the Film Academy, which is a 2-year international course for a very small number of international students. We call them researchers because the focus of the 2-year program is on research rather than on production, because we believed when we set it up that actually the film sector is driven by production and the need to produce, and we thought it would be good to have a space where actually the focus is more on process and on reflection, say CQ research, rather than training to produce. And this will be sort of probably the line of my interventions today. And when it comes to freedom versus restrictions, maybe the two are not mutually exclusive.
Thank you, Mieke. We will come back to that later on. Rumle, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Rumle Hammerich. I'm really happy to be in this beautiful city for the first time. I must say you are some daredevils. I'm talking about bicycling. Very fast, in all directions, no helmet, and talking in the phone. I hope you are as daring, you know, when you make films, because then you have a great future. So, no, I know nothing about Netherlands films. but I will share some of my experiences as a director and as head of the drama department and as head of a production company where I was supposed to be as an sort of a game changer or change things. So I've been in a lot of different creative collaborations, and maybe you can use this. I don't know. Let's see.
We would like to give the floor to each panel member and then have the floor open for discussion. And in the end, we hope to have some statements or questions which we can use in the panel discussions later on this afternoon. Mieke, the Film Academy teaches students, the future directors and scenographers, etc. Is there a contradiction between learning the students the skill of the film trade and learning or give the floor to students to find their own voice of filmmaking? Do you think, is there a tension between the two, or is that more the two sides of the same coin?
Well, I think they're probably more two sides of the same coin rather than complete contradiction, and I think skills are incredibly necessary also for creators who are innovative. So it's not it's really a false dichotomy if you separate skills versus talent or experiment or something. I mean, it needs skills also to be able to experiment. You cannot experiment on the basis of nothing. So skills, I think, are important, but what's crucial, I think what combines the two is a focus on the individual or the subjective nature of the individual maker, whether it is a producer or a camera person or a director. It is through that sort of individuality that you can get also, if we talk a little bit later about sort of, okay, what's good for the climate, you can get a more interesting cultural climate if you focus on individuals or on makers who dare to speak their subjectivity. And that is where talent and skills come together. So for me, it's not a contradiction.
And these skills, the new techniques allows people to take up on different roles in filmmaking. So a director can be a director in the first movie, be an editor in another movie, etc. etc. Is this new process of filmmaking also translated into the educational system of the Film Academy?
That's a bit more difficult to say, but I've seen there are colleagues of mine here in the audience. I mean, there's on the one hand, you want makers, and that's not just true for filmmakers, that's true in theatre, that's true everywhere, to be flexible, because the world asks for flexible people. So you want them to be able to change and to be open to developments and all the rest. At the same time, you need to teach them maybe one basic skill. Very often they say it's like a tea thing. You need to be able to go deep with one particular skill, but you also need to have the overview and the interest. I think that's much more important maybe than skills in that sense. An idea of the breadth of the things that you might be doing, but I think you may still need, but this also has to do with how your educational model fits. You may need a particular skill to start with in order to broaden out.
Yeah. Thomas, you told already a bit about your production company and how you would like to work. And sometimes you think for a project it's the best way to work with the funds and you might say in the system. But on the other hand, you make products or make movies without any support from the FAF or other financiers. Or different financiers. Can you tell us what makes you decide to work within the system or to go your own way?
I jump back one thing. What was and still is surprising to me, as if you look at the title, Freedom versus Restriction, is for all of us. I mean, in Belgium and the Netherlands and Denmark, we have the complete freedom. I mean, there is no restriction on what we can do. there's material out there, there's a sort of distribution system out there, you can make movies. I mean, you can make movies whenever you want, however you want. It's just when you want to go to the film fund and ask for money, then you are confronted with some rules, and I think they still are very feasible, I must say. But we have the complete freedom to make films. And so we had, in the past, and we just decided for the next winter, from time to time with our production company, we decide to make a film without money from the film fund to absolutely do what we want to do. And not to complain when the film fund confronts us with certain rules. I mean, by accepting the money from the film fund, we accept the rule, the way they want to play the game. I mean, I see them as a studio. It might be weird. I see them as a studio that are slate funding. For us, it's about 8 to 10 films a year. And if in these 8 to 10 films there's one successful, we have Girl this year, people. Wow. I mean, as a studio, you can only go like, blah, berserk. If you have every 2-3 years a film like this, wow, great, you're a wonderful studio. And if as a production company we are confronted with, yeah, they want this and this and this, yeah, deal with it, play with it, or don't accept the money. Don't complain. I mean, especially with the technique for today, we've done Little Baby Jesus, and that's, yeah, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. Because what makes a good movie is in no way defined by the money that's put in. The energy, yeah, maybe, the time, probably, but in no way the money. I mean, we made movies, Little Baby Jesus, on a 60,000 euro budget we gathered from all over the place without film fund money, and that went to Cannes. We made movies of 2 million, and that didn't do anything. So there is no correlation. It is a black box industry. We have some elements, and you can reflect on these elements, and you put them in a black box, you shake, and there comes something out of it. And what will come out of it is unpredictable, and that's a problem. We are in an uncertainty business, and we always want to pull it to the risk business. Risk business is insurance. They can calculate on 100 people, well, you might die when you're 80, and we calculate on all these numbers, we calculate the risk. And we want to do this all the time with film business, and it doesn't work. To a certain level, you have the risk of producing and not going over your budget, but as a result, it is an uncertainty business, not a risk business. And what we did with Mindsmeet, and it's every 2-3 years, we force ourselves to make a film out of the system. And for instance, just to give you, it's not only first-time directors. We did it with Guust with his first film. I did it with Erik de Kuiper, which is a very formal director and an old man. I mean, he's about 75. He doesn't like it when I say it, but it is old. And we did it with Erik de Kuiper, and now we're going to do it with Bas. Bas, we shot first feature, and now we just finished the second feature, Hellhole. And we decided this winter, because something in the production of Hellhole, there was a story that was left behind because of the restrictions of the money and the shooting days and all that. And we still all felt like, oh, that storyline, it really triggers us. So we decided with a bunch of 8 people, we're going to make it this winter. We're just going to take a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema, whatever thingy, and we're going to shoot it. And we'll see what it does. But it gives us the freedom to, in 8 days, shoot a feature film and see what will be the results. And to force ourselves all the time to go in and out of the system. And I really want you to reflect on this. You have the freedom. We're not living in Russia, Hungary, or North Korea. If we were sitting here in North Korea, I could say, yeah, freedom versus restriction. We have a big discussion going on. But here you have complete, absolute freedom to make a film. Seriously. I mean, and the material is there. I mean, black magic thing, what does it cost? 800 euros, 1,000 euros? That's like 50 times McDonald's. It's good for you not to go 50 times to McDonald's, and you have your camera to shoot your film. I have a film now, and I'll stop here. I have a film that was selected for Camera Image Best DOP. And I've been shooting with Nicolas Karakatsanis, for those who know him. I've been shooting Bas de Vos's films on 35mm and 65mm stock, because he wants the absolute, and he dreams of going to Camera Image with these films, never been selected. We shot a film in Bolivia on a Blackmagic Pocket. by a female director who's not even the DOP, but she took the camera and just, because it's so little, filmed with it. And in cameras, they go like wild. It's in competition. They say, this is brilliant camera work.
So what you're saying is freedom is not something that's given. Freedom is something that you take.
Yeah.
So that is really crucial, I think.
And on top of that, we have it. I mean, we have no restrictions. There's no governmental, political... We have complete freedom. We have it. What are we discussing? Another question is what to deal with the film funds. But that's something completely different. If you want to talk about freedom, hey, hell, we have it. We can even laugh with our king and queen. Well, we can, you can't. Be careful. I can.
I really like the concept of uncertainty versus risk you mentioned. And also, I think it's important that trust is an element in it. That you are given the trust by your financiers to do within limits of the budget and what you agreed upon beforehand, that you can make the film yourself, because you said I can make a film, but you didn't say I can make my film. And sometimes there's a difference between making the film or your film, I think.
I don't think the film exists.
No,
I mean, I've also said this thing. Making a movie is very simple. Making a film is very simple. Making a good film is a fucking hell of a job. I mean, that's the most difficult thing to do. Even Garcia said it. He wrote so many good books, tried to direct one film, it completely failed. And he said it is the hardest job in the world. Directors, is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and making a good movie is... So making the film doesn't exist. You have a dream, you aspire to the dream, you see the thing in front of you. When we always begin, there's always this phase in production. First script, first draft is written, the idea was there, and you all get very enthusiastic. You think, oh, this is gonna be it. From that moment on, 3-4 years later, till the film is finished, you only have, I call it the path of frustration. There is gonna be inevitably frustration. We never have enough time, money, and assets. I just did a film of 3 million euros, fourth film by Guus van den Berg. First time I had 3 million euros. Before we started, I thought, okay, now we're there. I've been doing films for 500,000, million, now we're there, 3 million. Wow. I mean, it's been the most frustrated film. We had all the time, not enough money, not enough assets. So there's always going to be frustration, because otherwise the director always wants more. Of course he wants more. That's the beauty of creativity. You think, I don't want 1 elephant, I want 10 elephants. The image is going to be much better with 10 elephants than 1 elephant, of course. So and then what I say production is the path of the least frustration. There's going to be frustration. We're going to deal with it. What is the path of the least frustration? And that's a dialogue between the production and the director. What do you hope to create? What do we can bring on the table? And how can we more or less match these two? But the film, there's this example of, was it René, the French director, who, with Romy Schneider, he had all the money in the world to prepare the film. Well, it was never made. Okay. Why not? Because you get stuck in a search for perfection that is unattainable. Of course you can't get the perfect movie, which is a quite interesting project to attain.
Yeah. So maybe this is a little bridge to my Danish neighbor. In the 95 we had Dogma. Get rid of all the technical stuff and narrow it down to the essence of the story. How has the Danish film industry has developed from the 90s till now?
Yeah, frustration is a good word, because this 25 years ago it was a wheel of frustration, like one of these Tivoli wheels, all full of frustrated people sitting and screaming. The producers, the directors, the distributors, the schools, the film institute, everybody was really frustrated, and the audience hated Danish films too, for good reasons, you can say. And what happened was that you have this wheel and it's sort of stuck, and then you need a little wheel that can make the big wheel turn, and that was in that little wheel, I think Lars von Trier was there, and another director called Ole Bornedal, and also the TV series department. Lars made this series that I was also producing, The Kingdom, and Ole made a film that launched a number of young actors that now are really, all of them are actually working in outside. So there was, amongst these young actors, you know, the things they would like to show, they couldn't show because the tradition was just boring. And this little wheel started to turn, and we got a lot of young directors in the TV drama department, and they started making TV series that had a fast-moving, storytelling, focus, character-driven drama. And the audience, they really liked this. And then those actors who were there, they could be used in feature films, and they could be main actors there. And then the whole wheel started to turn. And now things are going down again. Because, you know, the producer thinks, couldn't we just have the big wheel turn without the little wheel? Without those crazy people that you cannot control, you know, that go over budget and have crazy ideas. And I would just say, no, you can't. You should ask the Lord of help to find these crazy people to make, at all times, the big wheel turning. The most important thing, I think what happened was, within all this frustration in one of these cabins with screaming directors and writers, they were screaming, oh, the audience have left us, the audience hate Danish films, they hate us, they have left us, what is wrong? And we had to realize that it wasn't the audience who had left Danish film, it was us who had left the Danish audience. Why had they left us? Because they could see stuff that was much better, much more interesting. American films, for instance, that most of them were about society, all kinds of troubles in society, corruption, drugs, sex abuse, you name it. As soon as there's a problem, you will see an American film dealing with these problems. And our films weren't really interesting for normal people because they are really interested in society. The other fact is that we had to realize that the audience were the experts. Every time we are in the theater, every time we are reading a book, every time we are having an intellectual discussion, they are watching telly, right? So they know.
Well, we have a room full of people. So.
Yeah. I mean, they know what a film should do within the genre. I'm not talking about quality, I'm talking about quality in genre. They know what a good action movie should have, and there are like 500 action movies made every year, but there's only one or two that will give you what you need in the genre, and then they will give you something extra, and that's what they want. That's what the audience doesn't want a remake. Doesn't want a boring copy of an American sitcom. They want a new sitcom. They want a Dutch sitcom or a Danish sitcom with an angle, with a person behind it that wants to tell people something. Whether it's a children's movie, it's an action movie, it's the same. Quality is in genre. It's not, you know, it's not the elites who decides what is quality. It's the audience. And the audience has left us, and it's like, you know, we're in the storytelling business, and people are just leaving the table while we are telling the story. How fun is that? It's not fun, I tell you. And then we had to look inside and say, okay, we got to tell better stories, and we have a brain, the Americans have a brain, and there's no excuse. So what happened also was that, you know, Lars, for instance, Trier was really pissed he's so skilled, this guy, with all technical things, and he knows everything about film, but he thought that was sort of straitjacket, that he had to wait every time for all the technical things. So he made this dogma with Thomas Winterberg and a couple of other directors. That is a lot of rules. So you're not allowed to use props. If you need a prop, you have to find a place where that prop is and film it. You're not allowed to use light. You can have like normal lamps standing, but you're not allowed to, because Lars wanted to go back to what is the essential thing about movie making is telling a story. You need a good script and you need good actors. And he would take everything away that could sort of distract you from this. And you shouldn't think that, oh, it's also very nice. It's also very beautiful pictures. The audience doesn't care. They want to see a story. They want to be taken away by characters. So that made this focus. So that was a lot of really strict rules. And that's one side of dogma. The other side is, of course, that the people who were paying money for these films weren't allowed to read the script. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you see, it's not only rules, it's rules and freedom. Okay? That makes the creative people tick. Okay, I can do all these rules because I'm running the show. And that's why the Film Institute didn't want to go into these films. So Lars and Centropo, they stopped the project, and then we picked it up in Danish drama and actually found the money in Sweden and Denmark and paid for it. And then it was a big success for us, you know, when the Film Institute came back after the film has been chosen to Cannes and everything. Couldn't we just get a little money in the film? So, okay. That was nice. We also made another.
You sold that very expensive to the film fund. Yeah, okay.
And I would just say that three of those 4 first films, they made a hell of a lot of money, and they were extremely cheap to produce. So it's just to tell you that what you are saying is that, you know, the audience wants to be entertained, and we have to decide whether we want to entertain them or not. But we decide what the topics are, what we want to entertain them. So I think for us it was a really, really important to find out that we had left the audience, and the reasons they had left us was because we were bad storytellers. It's hard, but you know, you have to face it. We also did another. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Another low-budget scheme. I moved to this Nordic film company, and we thought this document was fantastic, but that was Centropa. So we tried to find out. So I hired a director and a writer, and they developed a scheme called, we call it Director's Cut. And where dogma was rules, we tried to make frames within a frame. So we choose some directors and writers and said, you should come to us because we think you are talented, but don't come with a story. Because we don't want to cut your story down to fit the frame. We want you to come because you're great, and then you should fill the frame.
And the frame consists of what?
Money, for instance. And then we would do it like this, and we would say, you have to write on the synopsis 6 pages, but you will have to do it 50 times or whatever, until when we read the synopsis, we say, this is a great story. Once we have the synopsis, and we say, this is a great story, and you feel it's a great story, we will greenlight the film. So there will be no more of maybe, we don't know, maybe change page 52 and the ending is too sad and things like that. No. We want, you are talented, this is a great story, go do it, make us proud, you know.
So that's the trust issue.
What?
The issue of trust.
Yeah, exactly. It's really a lot about trust. That, you know, you have to trust also you have to find people that you want to trust. So the whole chemical thing of putting talent and production and money together is so essential. Maybe later I will talk a little bit about this the TV thing and the one vision versus shared vision, which I think is really important. But you know, there are really, and also in this, we had director's cut. I think we made 8 films, and Dogma, they made 7 or 8 films that were really good, and then it faded out. Why did it fade out? It's also really important. It's the same as with the big wheel and the small wheel.
It becomes the big wheel.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, producers or financiers thought that this was a great, so they had this dogma thing, and then they gave the dogma to young directors. And young directors can't do this. They can't take everything away and still think it's really funny. It has to be trained directors that knows the burden of aesthetics in a way, how much it costs, how much time it costs, how much it takes away from the acting and from the storytelling. So they feel free. So that was a big mistake. They gave the dogma to young people because it was low budget. But it was only low budget because you took everything away. In a way, it was normal, expensive films, but you just said, go. So that's really important, you know, when you look at schemes and ways of doing things, that you have to look at the full picture. What were they actually doing? What kind of people made this success? What were the things that were there in order to process success or
Yeah, there's not one model for all times for
No.
people.
No, but there's one element in I like the visual of the big wheel and the little wheel. I always use the 3M company. 3M company was the glue company, and what they did was they had their production, and that was what I call in film when we produce entertainment, and they make the things for the audience. But then every employee in 3M could take like 2 hours off every week to work on a personal project. No questions asked, nothing. They were still paid, and that gave us, for instance, the Post-its came out of that. Yeah. And the little wheel, indeed, is the research and development. That's why you need to have people experimenting and not even thinking about the audience, but just doing things, and that will feed back to the big wheel. Mm-hmm. The problem is when we think we can take a formula from the little wheel and make it again a big wheel, it falls still again. We need, thank you.
You're welcome. I have a wonderful photo actually from Syria where I was, where they have these water wheels. They have the river down there, but they cannot get the water up in the fertile soil. So they make this gigantic water wheel, but there's a little water wheel that starts the big water wheel. It's so beautiful picture, and it's like 30 meters high.
That's exactly what I was.
It's nice. Yeah. I will send it to you.
Oh, lovely.
It's a wonderful picture.
We'll put it up.
We just, sorry.
Is there a sense in the audience that that we feel that there's enough space in the Netherlands to make this small wheel, to have a lot of, is there enough energy, is there enough money available, is there a lot of, are people willing to take the risk to fail in making such a small wheel, or is
there enough frustration? Because that's when there has to be a lot of frustration. You cannot just, turn it around before the frustration is top, and then suddenly, poof.
Yeah, so and again, you say the word to take the risk to no. Again, there is no risk. There's just uncertainty. Risk is what we can calculate. Yeah, but it's so much in our mind, the whole system of, am I taking the risk to fail? Well, I mean, there is no risk.
The industry is contaminated by the risk to fail.
But there is no risk. I mean, we're not living in a society that if you made a bad movie, the secret police comes, takes you away, and shoots you.
No.
Okay, if we would, that would be a risk. I think we might make creative films if we do that. It would be wonderful. Think about it. Yeah, but we don't live in that kind of society. So what is the bloody risk?
Frustration.
What is? Frustration is something else. But what is the risk?
But maybe there isn't enough frustration. Maybe we should create frustration first.
Yeah.
But I actually think. People from the Film Fund will know better, but I think there's actually plenty of opportunity for development and for doing things. But I understood that actually that development possibility is not being used very often because we're so production driven. So we so very much want to go immediately into production rather than take the time to research, to develop, to have an open-ended process where you don't know yet what the end result might be. Maybe it's a film, maybe it's something else, maybe whatever. But that space, I understood, is actually there, but there are too few people using it, which is, again, freedom is not something that is given. You've got to fucking go and ask for it, or take it. Not just ask for it, that'd be too polite. Just got to go and take it.
Are there some producers who want to comment on this? Or otherwise? Can you tell your name and when it's relevant, your position?
Thank you very much. My name is Alfred van der Klis. I made my first feature movie, a few weeks ago. It's now in cinema on private equity. It is with nice movie music of Bas van Otterlo, Eva Duivestein. It's called Inspirator. Maybe you heard about it. But the interesting thing is because I have not a background from the cinema world. And I took this challenge to find out what I can do without the film funds, because what you said, there are a lot of possibilities, and in a creative way, there are no restrictions. But I think here there are a lot of professionals besides, yes, in a creative way, we can create everything, but we have to eat. We cannot lend or borrow cameras the whole day of NEP or something like that. So we need money in the end. And if it's not through the film fund, because the film fund cannot give everybody money to produce, then we need other ways. And there is maybe we're coming in the field also of risk and not only uncertainty. Because if you would like to have investors, and investors said, well, on a certain moment, I would like to have my money back. A return on investment, which is quite okay. But in the Dutch market, or maybe the Benelux market, it is maybe a money problem or an economic value of enough audience going to a cinema. So I heard your words, but I think for a lot of people here would love to create. But in the end, we also have to eat because we love to be creators. Maybe you can give creative. And I think we have to think about that future. Because it was a hard challenge to reach it. It works. But we all have to think about from the creative part to a professional part.
Yeah, but that's the whole survival question. I mean, who says you have to eat on, how to explain that? It can't be that you get up one day and say, I want to be a basketball player, and you know what? I want to make money on that. Maybe I'm a lousy basketball player. And maybe after 2 years trying to be in the basketball team, everybody shuts me out, and I can go complain and say I can't make a living on playing basketball, but I want to play basketball. I mean, it's just the same thing in our business. I mean, you can try and get in. Maybe you have some talent, and I don't even say a creative talent, can be like a complying talent that you make exactly what the television and the film fund wants, and you can make a living out of it. And maybe you don't. There is there's only uncertainty that you will make a living on this. And if you want to eat, you can go and work in a supermarket or whatever, a parking lot, whatever, and get some money to eat. I mean, for us, it's almost an obvious thing that we can make a living on the film business. I know people from South Korea, the first 3 films, for them it's most obviously that you have a job, you work during the day, and you make your film during the night. Most of them make their first 3 films like that. So it's just a question of survival and uncertainty again.
Are we spoiled in as Dutch filmmakers?
No, we're spoiled as Western beings. I mean, get real. Of course we're spoiled.
Yeah.
I think so. Do I need to stand up or no? No. I'm Doreen van der Pas. I'm head of New Screen, and I think it's really interesting what I said, and I very much share the way you. Your view, Thomas, on how you say it. But what I would like to respond on the freedom versus restrictions. I'm a lucky girl because I work at New Screen at the Film Fund, and there's a lot of freedom there. And what I would like to add is the fact that we really try in all different sections or programs, and that's not really free because we have them, like we have the wild cards, we have our shorts, we have the low budget film, that we really. And that's the way Thomas put it, and I like that, the people we trust. And that we mean is, of course, we make a selection, but we trust people on their combination of, we think, the talent or the handwriting they have, which is interesting on one hand, on the other side, the vision that someone has, because I think that's really important, the vision of what they want. And it don't need to be a strict version. You don't need to know exactly how it ends, but what I want to stress is the fact that in these programs, we really we select them, of course, somewhere. We give them money, and then they can be completely free. And it started with the wild cards, where we did at first, and we took it over from our Belgian friends because they invented it.
We made a feature film on it. Rupert was made on a wild card.
Yeah, I know. But what I want to tell here is that I'm really amazed of what people can make from this freedom. And we can only stare at it and trust and see the result in the end, and be there if they want to know anything, or if you can share our network or whatever that they want. And I absolutely strongly believe in that. And it's different for the other projects, maybe for more experienced makers. They work on different sites because they have to, the financing is more different. But I think it can be a model that works really well. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it also applicable to commercial or more or less commercial movies which are funded by the funds as well? Or is it only for...
No, it's always, and that's funny because we always give freedom if people want that freedom. And there are examples, maybe not in a big commercial film, because then you really have to, the financing part of the fund is really small comparing with the market money and all the other ones. But I know that, for instance, shortly, someone like Mieke de Rooij really made a very a film not based on a completely scripted basis, but different model, and we have that that space, but then it depends on the vision, and it's difficult maybe. But I was not involved in that one, so I don't know exactly how the financing was.
Okay. But again, don't you make a mistake in risk assessment? Didn't you guys make Red Band? Yeah. Commercial project? Yeah. Wonderful commercial project. Yeah, brilliant. Think about this. I mean, the guy who made The Room, probably one of the worst movies in the world, didn't know anything about filming. Made this Tony Weissman made this terrible, overdramatic film. Is bad to look at, and is a very big commercial success if you think of it, because it still sells all over the world. He just sold a remake to an American studio. Yeah, what is commercial success? Commercial success is the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. In hindsight, you can take a wall and I shoot at the wall with a pistol, puff, 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 and then I take a paint and I draw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And look how I predicted the commercial success. That is what sales agents, distributors, and film fund. We are in a production business, not in a prediction business. So commercial success is not there. I think the concept of the big wheel and the small wheel, the big wheel being we let the audience be the expert and we try to bring on product for the audience, is something else. But as a commercial success, there's no prediction. I mean, the biggest commercial film, in the world is Deep Throat. In comparison to the investment and the return on investment, that's the biggest commercial success in cinema in the world. Deep Throat, think about it. No, don't think about it.
Ate, you wanted to add something to the discussion.
Hi, my name is Ate de Jong. I'm going to contradict Doreen a little bit, not on her good intentions, but maybe on the practical side. I made several films in Hollywood, made several films in Holland, I made several films in the UK. And the weird thing is that when I went to the UK, we started to make very low-budget films, like films for £150,000, where everybody was paid and all that. And when we lacked about £20,000, and I contacted the film fund to get it done. It wasn't like they didn't want to do it, but the time it took to get a approval was so long that by the time I just thought, you know what, I put the money in myself, and we made the film, and we didn't have any restriction, because by the time I got an answer that it was even possible, we already had made the film. So there is a certain flexibility that lacks in an administrative body, which is probably impossible to do it differently. But when Michiel talks about freedom and restrictions, the administrative side of a film fund brings restrictions beyond just the freedom to make the film you want. But there are restrictions just by the administrative functioning of the fund. The most freedom I've had was in Hollywood, to be honest. And then when you pay the film totally yourself, you have all the freedom you want. The one thing I wanted to ask the panel is, because it's very nice to make a film with a lot of freedom, but the biggest problem for a film to be made with not that much money is distribution. And when you do make a film in Hollywood, The one thing you have is you have an enormous apparatus that distributes the film throughout the whole world. If you make a film for £150,000, the danger is that every distributor says, you know what, we didn't put money in it, we don't care. So you basically throw your film. You made the film, which is great, but how do you get the film to be seen?
Actually, Art, it is a bit outside the scope of the discussion we are having now. We have only 10 minutes left, but maybe...
I think it's a very interesting point he made. Yeah, seriously. It's true. When you go into low budget, your biggest challenge is distribution. And what happens is that if you're put on an even higher standard. I mean, an example. C'est arrivé près de chez vous, Man Bites Dog. Was made with no money, comes to Cannes, hits the market. Everybody wants the film. Film sells all over the world. The black and white mockumentary about the serial killer. Yeah? So what happens with these low-budget films is that you're getting on an even much more higher standard, because there's been no money put up front in the film, so they all have the liberty the whole film is being made, and then they can judge, yes, we're going to do it, and no, we're not going to do it. That's basically it. It's a much more difficult standard, and you put the unpredictability, you accept it even more. But there are examples, every 2-3 years, of the Blair Witch Project, there are examples of films that are made without any of this apparatus behind it. They get made, and then they get noticed. Let the right one in was an example. There are many examples. Every 2 years we have this magic film that does it.
Mm. Yeah, also, you know, when you make art house movies, they have to be art. Mm-hmm. You know, they have to cut. Because we have the mainstream film to entertain and to do things, and then we have the art house films. They have to make a cut, either their style or their topic or their way of doing things in a new way. But there are lots of films around that are labeled as art house that doesn't even have this ambition. Mm. So that's why they fail, I would say. So, you know, art house movies, you can make money on art house movies, because if they cut, they might win some important prizes or some other prizes, and then the art house distributors wants to have this film, and then, you know, it has been a cheap film to produce, so you make money. It's okay, but you know, you have to look at what is the genre. It's art house. It's cut, and it's really, really important to, you know, because that's what you expect. Otherwise, a boring art house film is really tough to come through, right? But there's another thing about this trust is that I think that it's really important that that we will keep this environment, you know, or develop it where the producer and the director and the writer, and you have this relationship of trust between these things, because there are things. I work a lot in TV. Also, I direct a lot of TV series between the feature films that you can make every 5 years if you're lucky. You know, I do some training by directing TV series like, you know, The Bridge and Borgen and things like that. And the way we work is very much a trust thing that I call it shared vision, that we are, you know, director or the writer first, and then the producer, and then the director. And this triangle, in this triangle, there's this common idea of what is the whole series about, what is the soul of the series, what is it we want to tell society, and everything like that. And then they let me do my job. I mean, all the series I talked about here, I had never seen a producer on the set, maybe, you know, coming, hi, how are you? We are fine, okay, see you. Or a writer. And now there's this things coming from the States, it's called One Vision, and it's called showrunner. And I have full respect for showrunner, which is Kelly, which is Sorkin, who has directed and written and produced 125,000 episodes of different TV series. I know that they know what they want. But the thing is that if we have this one vision and you give it to a young producer, say, you're the one with the one vision, things starts to be fear-driven. You know, you fear that you do wrong. you fear that you haven't understood what the master has said and things like that. And that's really, really expensive, because when you have fear, you need control, and that's a really, really bad energy. So I'm just saying that if this terrible One Vision thing comes to your country, fight it.
We have still 5 more minutes. This could have been the last words of the session, but can I give the floor to somebody else who wants to, Maarten?
Yeah. My name is Maarten Treuriet. I'm a director. And the one thing that really exhilarates me of this discussion is the trust. The one thing we lack in the Netherlands is trust. The directors don't trust the producers don't trust the film fund. Nobody trusts each other, which is killing all the creativity. And it's something we have to fight. Thank you for that.
Yeah, but try to find people you have fun with. That's a really, really good start. And maybe you should just have sort of speed dating with producers, and because this is a chemical thing. It's chemical. It's not logic.
Yes.
Just a lot of
the
speed
system
dating
in the Netherlands
and,
is
drinking
so
and partying and stuff like that. That's come on.
Or a dark room. A dark room with producers and directors, and they have to fight each other. That's a chemical thing.
Yeah, certainly.
A new model has arranged at the table.
I'm sure everybody be in favor. Yeah.
But the system in the Netherlands dictates that the producer is the showrunner. And I think this is a mistake.
But is there anyone in this room who thinks that that is actually what is happening when you make a film?
Yeah, who's here a producer who feels like being a showrunner?
Who will take responsibility, I would say, for the whole film, for everything?
Yeah, but then there's no showrunner. Showrunner is hierarchy.
Yeah, but
togetherness is the triangle.
But still,
perpetuated differently.
Yeah.
So that's what we are talking about, a mirage, you know. And we shouldn't do that. We should talk about the creative triangles that we can work in, and finding people, you know, it's fun to work with, and then, you know, you get the positive energy.
But it's based on trust, and that's what's lacking.
And is that trust in Denmark? Are these triangles very often combinations that go together for a really long time, or is it go
from the film school?
Yeah, and then year after year, production after production after production. I think that's also very crucial, because that's where you build up trust. I mean, if you keep on changing as a maker or as a producer who you work with, then every time with every new project, you've got to start and build that trust. So maybe we need to invest more in companies or in
at the film school. I also teach at the film school both in Denmark and Norway, and we found out that the difficult thing for the director was making the first feature. So my plan was that they should make a feature while they were in school instead. So the middle film that they make we couldn't make a feature, but it was 1 hour and was a low budget, and they were in the trenches. You know, they were really 5 people, and we made some sort of low-budget rules, or whatever you would call it. And they were fighting there, shooting for like 4 weeks, and they made this 1 hour movie, and they were really proud. And all of these guys have actually made their second feature now, after, because the finishing film is so potential. Everybody, you know, the cameraman and everybody wants to have something, and so it's so now it's really interesting that they have sort of, over that point, they don't wait for 5 years before they make the first.
I think that's true in Holland as well, isn't it? That students from the various schools actually stay together also for future productions, but at the same time there is a tendency to switch.
You told me that a first-time producer cannot produce without being
he has
attached
to produce
to
in collaboration with a more experienced producer.
Spoiled in the mind by an old producer.
Yes, exactly. But this is the problem. This is one of the problems.
Thank you, Doreen.
No. I think we have time for one more last question, then we have to round up for the next session. Yeah, over there.
Barbara.
Well, this puts the pressure on me. One thing I would like to add, my name is Barbara Visser. I'm a visual artist and filmmaker. One thing I would like to add to the analogy, the beautiful analogy of the big wheel and the small wheel, is that I feel in the Netherlands that we do have both. And it's certainly very important that artistic risks are being supported. Uncertainties. However, as coming from the visual arts, I sometimes have the feeling that the small wheel and the big wheel are not touching. So we do have both in good quantity, relatively good quality, but we should make sure that they touch each other, otherwise nothing happens.
Rumle wants to
reflect
on that.
That's what I was talking about before. The small wheel has to rip up things. It has to stir up. It has to provoke. It has to make people aware that it's there. It's a razor blade and it's running around. And you know, the Kingdom, the series, The Kingdom, Lars von Trier's. I mean, he breaks all rules in filmmaking in that series. All rules, and nobody cared because the story was so, in my opinion, great. But it really stirred up everything, that it could be so ugly. It could be so bad and then be at the same time be so good. So that's the kind of things that the little wheel has to do. Really, really disturbing stuff.
But you come back to trust there. That you have to trust that you can break convention.
It means that the little wheel, as you say, the big wheel and the little wheel are not touching. What happens? The big wheel stops, but the little wheel should. If that is really the case, the little wheel should go so fast, go berserkly fast, that the big wheel says, "Oh shit, we have to touch it."
Exactly.
You have to seduce them. You cannot say, "Oh, it's not touching me." You have to be so inspiring that they say, "I want to be there."
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
I want to get next to that.
So
if you're complaining that you're not touching, then the big wheel. Okay, but then the big wheel, the little wheel should really start thinking, how can we go?
We all have to work on that, I think. It's not only the responsibility of the little wheel.
No.
But,
no, but that's just the mechanism I'm talking about. In order to make the big wheel turn, there has to be.
Don't make it a rule now, eh?
It's not you.
All this. I get a signal from the organization that we have to close down. I'm afraid. I think we can pursue our discussion in the foyer later on. What I learned from the discussion is that trust is very important. We should shift the industry from risk to uncertainty, and we should stop nagging so much about other people and have a reflection of our own role in the industry and get to work. I see you later in one of the roundtable discussions. Thank you for being here.